Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to episode 15 of the Best Seat in the House podcast. I'm your host, Rob Cramer, alongside, as always, my co-host, Daniel Bobo Kurlan. We got a lot to get in today, but Dan, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay. Feeling okay. It's like finally, I somewhat got over what happened the last a couple of days ago. Unfortunately,
Yeah, we definitely have to get into all the New York Rangers talk, as unfortunately, this is the first show in the Best Seat in the House podcast 15-week history that the New York Rangers are not actively playing. Their season is officially over. They're in the offseason. They were eliminated in Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Final just this past week. And, when it comes down to it, it was a rough series. But
yeah, Grandma, I'm filming now.
We had a great series with the Rangers and everything. Coming out of there, very, very tough loss, Dan. After that series conclusion, how are you feeling with the Rangers right now?
Oh, I was feeling upset after that one. I'm surprised I didn't drop that beer bottle to break.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think a lot of Rangers fans are throwing beer bottles after these 4 straight games from pretty much Game 3 to the rest of the series, as the Rangers drop the series in 6. But we'll get to that in a minute. Like I said, I'm Rob Cramer alongside Daniel Bobo Kurlan, and Dan, looks like you got yourself in a new location today. You're on site in your backyard, correct?
Yep, I'm in my backyard right today during a.
There we go. Just enjoying the nice weather. You can't beat that in a beautiful June day in Queens, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and in a couple of hours, our first place New York Metropolitans will be going right now we're recording this on Wednesday night as the Mets take on reigning NL Cy Young Award winner Corbin Burns and the Milwaukee Brewers. So they beat 4-0 last night. So we got that to touch on. Also, the we'll do it quick at the end too, since me and you've been wrapped up in the hockey, but the Golden State Warriors are also 1 win away from capturing their first NBA championship in a couple of years. They're going to knock off they have an opportunity to knock off the Boston Celtics. So we have a very interesting series going on over there. Much like the Rangers series too, Boston started off strong, but then that championship will of the Golden State Warriors look like it's just taken over, and they're going to capture most likely another NBA championship. Have you been paying any attention to that series, Dan?
I could only imagine what my dad would be like if he were alive today. All right, my dad was a Celtics fan.
Was he really?
He probably a lot of those championship wins he got in the 70s and in the early 80s.
Yeah, and the Red Auerbach and all those great 70s like you said, the 70s and 80s Celtics teams. I mean, team with Larry Bird and all those great players from that era. Definitely hard to root against. I mean, unless you're a Knicks fan or a Lakers fan, I guess, from back then. So very cool little tidbit information there. Dan, so I stall to get into the Rangers series because just doing the sinking our teeth into that series in retrospect is just going to be really, really hard. So before we get into that, let's give ourselves a little plug right now. Let's give ourselves a little social media plug. Dan, Where can anybody listening check you out on social media?
Sure, you can find me on social media. My Twitter account, Bobo103 NYC on Twitter, Bobo718DK on Instagram, and Daniel Kurlan on YouTube.
All right, and definitely give Dan a like and subscribe to his YouTube channel there. You could check our show out, the Best Seat in the House podcast, on Twitter at @BSith_podcast. You can also check us out on Instagram at Best Seat in the House podcast. And you can check my personal Twitter account at Cramer NY. So thanks for following. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing. And thanks for all the support, because we, just like we've been saying the last few weeks, we've really been appreciating all the support. Dan, your mom has been great too. Your mom Aurora on Twitter helping us out. I know we've got Disabled Officer on Twitter helping us out. So many people have pitched in and done a lot of nice things for us over the last few weeks. So we definitely got to tip our cap to them, right, Dan?
Yep, we definitely thank you guys all for all the wonderful support. Thanks for helping this show grow to where we are now, and maybe even further.
Exactly. And also, before we move on into covering our actual sports, we want to wish, even though it's yesterday and it's going to be 2 days past, we want to wish Big A, right, Dan, a happy birthday.
Yep, happy birthday, Big A.
Yeah, Big A is a great guy. He's a photographer. Please check out anything that Big A has to do. Check him out on Twitter at Big A614, and you can check out all of his photography work there too. And what were you gonna say, Dan?
If you're probably a Brooklyn Cyclone game or two during a year, you'll probably see him his photography in action.
Definitely. Big A does all photography work for the Brooklyn Cyclones, and also he does a lot of the photography work for the IWF too, with our good friend Kevin Knight and all the great guys over there in New Jersey at the IWF.
If you go on their Twitter page, good chance that some of those photos you're seeing, almost all those photos you're seeing on their IWF Twitter page, Big A himself took.
Very true. And he's a very talented photographer too. You have to give that to Big A. He gets a lot of great shots. So definitely, like we said, happy birthday, Big A. We hope you had a good one. And, definitely would love to have Big A on the podcast sometime. So we should hook that up too.
Big A, you're more than welcome to come to make an appearance on here.
Absolutely. So as we move on now, also, too, before we get in the Rangers, we got to touch on the Yankees a little bit later, too, because the Yankees' roll continues to go on. They bid for a perfect game twice in a week. They had Garrett Cole through a great game against Tampa Bay. They're going for the sweep now. The Yankees currently are 45-16, just playing incredible baseball. So the Mets and the Yankees also, by the way, right now, I just want to give this little statistic. The best start the Yankees ever had through this many games, 61 for the Yankees and 62 for the Mets, is 47-14, which they did in 1998. They're 2 games behind that right now. So to be anywhere close to that pace is pretty freaking incredible. If you remember, that 1998 Yankees team went on to win 114 games and the World Series. So to be even in the same sentence as that team is pretty damn good. And for the Mets on our side, as the Mets sit here as we're recording this today, the Mets are the only team in the National League with 40 wins. So first team to get there in the NL, still the only team with 40 wins. And the Yankees are the other team with 40 wins in the American League now. But the Mets now 62 game start. For the it's a 63 game start, as the Mets right now currently sit at 41-22, only 3 games off the pace, or whatever it is. I guess I guess 4 games off the pace of the 1986 Mets, who started off 45-18. So a couple of little pretty good things to sink your teeth into if you're a Mets or a Yankees fan right now, as these teams are playing at a clip right now that we haven't seen in a long time, right, Dan?
I feel like we're we're living through that era almost similar to like the 50s when it seemed the road to the championship went through New York.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, and really, when you think about it, in the 50s, it was just crazy as the Yankees and the Dodgers played in the World Series, in 49. Then the Yankees were in the World Series in 50 against the Reds. You had the Yankees and the Giants in 51.
No.
As we're having a little technical difficulty as Dan's having a couple of friends / family members jump in there. But all good. And just like you said, the 50s was crazy, where really the only year that they didn't have a New York team in that was 1959, where it was the now Los Angeles Dodgers and the Chicago White Sox. So very, very interesting decade of baseball. And just like you said, going through New York, it could very well be going through New York this year. But unfortunately for us, one thing that won't be going through New York this year is the Stanley Cup final. Now we finally get to that, right, Dan? Hey, so just a couple of days removed from this right now. The Rangers were eliminated last Saturday night, Game 6 in Tampa Bay. I'm still trying to come to terms with it. It's such a bad feeling to lose that series, although the Rangers have a bright future ahead of them. Taking all that into consideration, Dan, what are your immediate thoughts, your immediate feelings following the Rangers' unfortunate 2-1 loss?
Oh, I cannot tell you how horrible it felt. Like I was like, I just had this shock look on my face the next day. I was like, I was probably, I think I shaved off my beard as soon as they lost.
Yeah, I don't blame you, because that beard sticking around, the playoff beard would have been a unfortunate reminder of everything that we had just lost. But there's a couple of things that I have to get into, though. I think in this Rangers playoff run, obviously, first of all, we have to be thrilled with how far this team went, right? I mean, if I would have told you when the playoffs started on whatever May 1st that the Rangers are going to be playing until mid-June, and we'd get to Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Final, I think we both would have signed for it, right?
And this was just great. This is the first time in a long time I really felt that that it was an exciting season for the first time in a couple of years.
True. Because I mean, the last time that the Rangers were even past the first round of the playoffs was 2017, when they lost in the second round to Ottawa, and then previous to that, the last time they were in the Eastern Conference Final was 2015, where they lost to Tampa Bay, and unfortunately, they won that Game 6 in 2015 to force Game 7. They won Game 6 7-3, and then end up losing 2-0 at the Garden. Their second straight 2-0 loss at Madison Square Garden in that series, and that series will always be a big, pain for me, because the Rangers were better than Tampa Bay that year. They were just beat up and just ran out of gas. And unfortunately, that's kind of what happened to the Rangers this year. But I do want to get your thoughts on this, though. This one thing where it just doesn't sit well with me. Where, okay, Game 6, Steven Stamkos, one of the greatest goal scorers of the last 20 or 30 years or whatever. Definitely one of the he's a great player, no doubt about it. Future Hall of Famer. He's got 2 cups now. He's going for his 3rd cup. He's been to 4 Stanley Cup final. You have to appreciate the great player Steven Stamkos is, and he scored that first goal to put them up 1-0. Then Frank Vetrano scores that second goal, for the first for the Rangers to tie it 1-1 power play goal. What an awesome goal by Vetrano. And then 21 seconds later, Stamkos comes rushing into the net and scores a goal. I have a problem. I have a major problem with that goal. That goal had goaltender interference written all over it. It bounced out of Stamkos's catching glove, off of I'm sorry, it bounced off of Shesterkin's catching glove, out onto Stamkos's leg, and then past him as he was crashing the net into the goaltender. I mean, it seemed to me that Shesterkin really didn't have an opportunity to make a save on that play, as he immediately skated out and was calling for goaltender interference. What was your thought on that, Dan? Did you think that was goaltender interference, or did you think it was a good goal?
That one, my mom was just not that long ago talking to my uncle, saying that, yeah, I could hear Daniel chanting, "These refs suck."
Yeah. And one thing too, that play was reviewed, and the thing that really pisses me off is that if that exact situation happened in the first round, and when it was Rangers and Pittsburgh, and they reviewed that, if that was a Rangers player going against one of the the Penguins goalies we faced, in that series, whether it was Jari or any of them, for the most part, that goal is not counting, right?
Exactly.
And so, look, I have to say too, in the first round, I had a problem with the referees. I think the officiating was terrible in the first round. The second round, look, it was a very, very tight series. I think the officials were fine in that second round. I had no issues with anything from that second round. But back in the third round again, it just seemed like the officiating was just garbage. And, not every call went against the Rangers, but a lot of them did. And I'm also not going to sit here and make excuses, because I think the Rangers were banged up. Ryan Strome had this pelvis injury, which, man, I'm telling you right now, you're trying to play hockey with a pelvis injury. That's quite the task, right, Dan?
Yeah, it is, and props to him for trying to do so.
Yeah, definitely props to him. He's a tough son of a bitch. So many guys that we really have to give props to in this run right now. Let's take the time, as first of all, Barclay Goodrow fractures his ankle in that first game, and then comes back, plays the end of that series against the Penguins, shows up for the whole series against Carolina, plays the whole series against Tampa Bay. Just a tough son of a bitch. Another guy, Ryan Lindgren. Boy, Ryan Lindgren just seemed like he was playing on one leg the whole playoffs, right?
Yeah, exactly. That whole playoffs, you got to give a lot of props to him. He may have played a big factor into us getting this far.
I agree. I think he definitely did. There were so many guys that stood out. Tyler Mott. I was such a big fan of Tyler Mott. I really hope that, and obviously we're going to have a lot of time to talk about the offseason and what's ahead for the Rangers and who they bring back and all this stuff. But really have to tip your cap to the guys that we just mentioned. I would love to see them bring back Tyler Mott. I think he was an incredible addition to this team. As we keep looking at this roster, though, you would have liked to see more from Artemi Panarin, but I also don't think that Panarin was as bad as everybody was saying. Would you like to see more goals? Yes. Would you like to see a couple of more assists? Yes. Would you like to see him a little bit better at 5-on-5 than just in the power play? Yes. But he was still a good, effective player, right, Dan? What are your thoughts on Artemi Panarin's playoff run?
But effective player, and I feel a lot of our big moments we wouldn't have gotten without him.
No doubt about it. And just like you're saying, I mean, first and foremost, Game 7 against Pittsburgh, right? He scores that big goal. Where would the Rangers be without him? They might not have even won that game.
Yeah, exactly. Got to give a lot of props to the bread man for that one.
No doubt about it, man. No doubt about it. And, me and you mentioned this last week, too, that the turning point in the series, unfortunately, was that Game 3. Even last week, it just had that feeling where you just knew you blow a game like that where you're up 2-0 in the series and 2-0 in the game in Tampa Bay, and you end up losing that game in the final 40 seconds, that is not only is it devastating for the Rangers and the fans and everything like that, it's just a big kick in the ass and a big just a galvanizing moment for that Tampa Bay team where they were a period or so away, maybe a period and a half away from being down 3-0 in that series and pretty much dead. I mean, if they go down 3-0 to the Rangers, even if they win that game 4, once they get back to the Garden and the Rangers have a chance to clinch, I have a feeling that game 5 might have went a little bit differently, right, Dan?
Yeah, I have a feeling that whole game would have went different. I might have still been seeing a beard on my face.
Exactly. As if the Rangers did pull off the win in that series and clinch the Eastern Conference, then the Stanley Cup final, well, actually, then Game 7 would have happened last night. Actually, unless the Rangers wrapped it up earlier, and then the Stanley Cup final, which is beginning tonight, just about 2 hours away from us speaking right now. It'll be last night when you're watching this on Thursday, but the Stanley Cup final would have been starting this Saturday. It would have been Saturday night in Colorado if the Rangers had pulled off the comeback once they went down 3-2 and had to win that Game 7 at Madison Square Garden. Would have been really cool. Would have been awesome to see another Stanley Cup final at Madison Square Garden, but it just wasn't in the cards this year, unfortunately. One other thing too, Dan. So Kapo, all we heard this playoff run was people like us who are Ranger fans that have watched every game this year, and not to mention national media people rave about the Rangers kid line with all the young guys centered by Capo, having Lafreniere on the left. I'm sorry. And you're centered by Philip Hedl. You have Capo on the right and Alexi Lafreniere on the left. So that line was talked about so much this postseason that, to me, as soon as I heard that they were scratching Kako for Game 6 and putting in Dryden Hunt, I really just felt like that was it. It was a panic move, which Gallant did not do the first 2 rounds. You did not see any of those panic scratches from Gerard Gallant against Pittsburgh or Carolina. He did it in this game, and unfortunately dressed Ryan Strome, who they ended up losing halfway through the game anyway. But no Ryan Reeves and no Kako. What are your thoughts on that, Dan?
And I had a shocked reaction. I had almost like, have you ever watched these videos from this guy on YouTube called the Angry Video Game Nerd?
Oh yeah, I've seen them.
Have you ever seen him when he does those reactions when it's something that like annoys him in a video game? That was it. It maybe seemed like it was horribly done when he does like that. What were they thinking?
Yes.
That's the expression I made when I saw the news of that on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good description of it, man. I'm sure a lot of Ranger fans had that reaction, and I was just shocked. I mean, I just couldn't believe that. And look, they directly asked Gallant about it, and he just said he was just trying to win a hockey game. He still thinks Kako is going to be a great player and play a big role in this organization. And he even alluded to the fact that Lafreniere and Kako, could potentially be in the top 6 next year, which, it'd be nice to see depending on who's in, who's out, because Ryan Strome's probably gone. Although Ryan Strome did talk at length in the post-game and postseason interviews about his want to stay in New York, and Artemi Panarin talked about that too. So, if we're going to be looking at some off-season decisions now, Dan, if you had to make the decision right now, if you're Chris Drury and you have to choose between Capo, I don't know why I'm rustling all these names up today. If you had to choose between Andrew Kopp, who had a great playoff run, and Ryan Strome, and maybe you're going to get Kopp for $4.5, $5 million, you're probably going to have to pay Strome closer to $5.5, $6 million. If you're sitting in the GM chair, Dan, who are you taking?
I'd probably have to take Kopp in this one.
Yeah, I agree, and not only because of his great playoff run. I just think that and I'm sorry, Artemi Panarin. I know that he loves Kopp, and I would love to find a way to keep Kopp if it's possible. Kopp, I would love to find a way to keep Strome. Ryan Strome has been a great guy ever since the Rangers got him. They got him for Tim Spooner, who was a throw-in in the Rick Nash trade, where they got Lindgren in that. If you look at that Rick Nash trade too, that's such a crazy trade. What they end up getting back for just giving a couple of games of Rick Nash to the Boston Bruins, as they got Rick Nash, Tim Spooner, who they turned into Ryan Strome, and the first round draft pick Niles Lundqvist. So that's
I feel that trade may eventually have led to what hopefully will be the big one eventually.
Yeah, winning the Stanley Cup, right?
Yep, exactly. I hope one day that it gets to go so well that maybe some weird scenario happens where one of the players where we win the cup and one of the players decides just the cup ends up here in this backyard.
You got that right, man. Would love to see that Stanley Cup come through Queens. Would love to see it out here on Long Island. But not for the Islanders, obviously. And that's one other thing that I also want to touch on. Speaking of the Islanders, too, I've been seeing so many of these Islander fans on social media and Twitter specifically, gloat about how the Islanders lasted last year one more game than the Rangers. Have you been seeing that, Dan?
The first I haven't seen is the only one I saw this from was from one of my relatives who's an Isles fan.
Mm-hmm. Now let me, just thinking about it too. It's like to gloat that you lasted, which by the way, the Islanders were a team that everybody said had to win the Stanley Cup last year. That was one of their big window years, as obviously the window slammed shut this year. Maybe they pry it back open next year, but it closed pretty quickly. You had 2 great years of their runs to the Eastern Conference Final with a Game 6 and Game 7 loss to Tampa Bay, respectively. And you're going to sit here and gloat about the fact that the Rangers, a team that most people didn't even pick to make the playoffs, not only made the playoffs, but won 50 games in the regular season, finished second in their division, and got all the way to Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Final, where people were picking against them in pretty much every round. And they had 2 7-game series. Like, to sit here and gloat that the Rangers didn't, I mean, it just seems ridiculous to me, right, Dan?
No, it does. It's ridiculous, all right? This team was a young team that was on the rise, and we outdid what we expected this year.
No doubt about it. Look at all the guys that were in the playoffs for the first time in their career. The real playoffs, too, with people in the stands, not that crap in the bubble up in Toronto 2 years ago. Like, what's that, Dan?
That reduced capacity stuff.
Yeah. Like, we're talking packed buildings, crazy playoff atmosphere. Think about the guys. You had Igor Shesterkin making his real playoff debut, Ryan Lindgren, Adam Fox, Brandon Schneider, Alexi Lafreniere, Philip Hedl, Kapo Kako. All these guys, have never played in the playoffs before. And, you add on a couple of veterans like Goodrow, who's had a couple of runs in the playoffs. Frank Vetrano played a couple of games beforehand in the playoffs. Ryan Reeves had some playoff experience. especially under Gerard Gallant and with the Blues before that. So, it's like the Rangers were such a young team, and the window for this team is just opening, which a lot of people thought that window wasn't going to open until next year. So to sit here and think that you're going to gloat and spike the ball on Rangers and Rangers fans because we got to Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Final, you're out of your freaking mind. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're mine.
Yeah. So just enjoy the off season if you're an Islanders fan. We'll finally get up to that too now, as our off season just began a few days ago. And the off season is going to be a very interesting process for a lot of these teams, because there's going to be a lot of teams, including our Rangers, that are going to be under the cap crunch. We were already talking about choosing between Strome and Cop. The Rangers had the flexibility this year to bring in guys like Vetrano and Cop and Justin Braun, who tip of the cap to Justin Braun too. That guy had a phenomenal playoff run. There was no points where you were pulling your hair out saying, "Oh man, I can't believe Justin Braun's out there," right, Dan?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you have to give that guy credit. He deserves it. The Rangers, had a great season. It was a very, very painful ending to it, as once the Rangers woke up that sleeping giant, that was it. Tampa Bay just steamrolled them, and there's nothing you can do. Like I said, I had to get that off my chest about that second Stamkos goal in Game 6, which I think was garbage. But you know what, though? To be honest, the way the Rangers are playing, the tentative style, the how beat up that team was at this point, and exhausted too, as the Rangers played, all these playoff games. They played 20 playoff games in 40 days. That's a game every other day, and you can do that for a while, but after 40 days, that catches up to you. And I think later in the series, that extra rest that Tampa Bay had that might have hurt them earlier in the series probably came back and helped them at the end, right, Dan?
That's probably what happened.
Yeah.
At 2 Game 7s in 2 rounds in a row.
Yeah, and the Rangers, unfortunately, that's what happens. They were a young team learning, and they just left themselves no room for error. And, even in the playoffs, you need a little buffer zone, a couple of days to just get yourself back together, because that's why the Stanley Cup, in my opinion, and the opinion of many, is the hardest trophy to win in sports today. Right, Dan?
Exactly.
Because you have to go through 4 brutal rounds of the playoffs just to call yourself a champion. And, it might be the same in the NBA, but guys aren't checking you into the wall and knocking your teeth out and, going through all those battles and all that stuff on ice skates, mind you.
Doing all that on skates.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you have to give credit to all these guys. And I think I'm not going to be alone on this one when I say, let's go Avalanche. Right, Dan?
Exactly. My friends in Colorado, going into this Stanley Cup Finals, I pick you guys to win it, so don't disappoint me.
Exactly. It's been 20 years since the Colorado Avalanche won a Stanley Cup, so it'd be very nice to see them stop this potential three-peat of the Tampa Bay Lightning, which would really just be insufferable to watch at this point. And let's just hope that Colorado, shows this great team that we've seen all regular season and now all playoffs, as they took out Edmonton in the Western Finals, and now they move on to the Stanley Cup to take on the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning. You got your Mets paraphernalia on, right, Dan?
Yep, exactly.
There you go. He's got his Mets hat. He's got his Mets shirt. I got my Mets stuff on here, as we've clearly moved on out of hockey mode.
Exorcism I performed in his shirt worked well.
What's that, Dan? Say that again.
Exorcism on this shirt worked well.
Oh, that's the deGrom shirt?
Yeah. Remember I said that the Grom shirt that I had that I feel like I've had to perform an exorcism on?
Yes. Very cool, very cool. And hopefully that exorcism is working even better than we thought, because it looks like at some point in the next week or two, we're going to be seeing Jacob deGrom on a mound. It's probably going to be a rehab mound first. But, as the Mets currently are trying to come back with a more healthy roster, because right now the team is still winning. I mean, we just had a mediocre road trip, but under the circumstances, look, you have to be thrilled with this 5-5 West Coast road trip, right, Dan?
I'm thrilled about it. Hopefully we could pull away further from Atlanta this week.
Yeah. See, the only thing that stinks, just like you mentioned, look, the Mets split with the Dodgers, took 2 out of 4. Then they went and lost, unfortunately, 2 out of 3 to San Diego. And then the last leg of this trip was in Anaheim, or Los Angeles, whatever you want to call it. The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, whatever they want to call it.
We'll call them the Anaheim Angels because Anaheim's quite a distance from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I got a relative in Southern California who knows exactly how long that trip is, because my brother, unfortunately, my brother's a Yankees fan, and he lives in San Diego, and the nearest American League team to where he lives is in Anaheim, so he knows that drive all too well.
Oh, yeah, and believe me, having lived in Los Angeles before, like I did, the Angels don't play in Los Angeles. Let's be honest here. The fact that they got away with that name for as long as they have is ridiculous. They're the Anaheim Angels, and they should still be the Anaheim Angels. Actually, I wouldn't even mind if they still called themselves the California Angels, because I always liked that too. What do you think about that?
I wouldn't mind that. I'd let that slide if they wanted to go in that direction.
Agreed. So, Angels organization, you have the permission from the Best Seat in the House podcast with myself and my co-host that you can call yourselves the California Angels again if you want. So stop all this Los Angeles nonsense, because nobody's buying it, not even here on the East Coast. So, so now that we got that out of the way, we finished up that leg of the tour on Sunday Night Baseball too, taking a game that was supposed to be started by Noah Syndergaard, who chickened out, and now he started against the Dodgers last night, another game where he'd take a loss. But what do you think about that, Dan? Before we get into some of the other Mets stuff, Noah Syndergaard checking it out against the Mets.
Well, saw on Twitter is that he didn't want to talk to any of the New York press. I may queued up the clucking chicken soundboard. I have a recreation of the Opie and Anthony soundboard. I may have added some other sound bites I liked on my on the set recreation of the soundboard I have on my laptop. I was probably playing that sound when I was reading that on my Twitter feed.
And rightfully so, because boy, that's a bad look for Noah. I mean, I don't know. I always like Noah Syndergaard when he was a Met just came off to me like a John Wayne type character almost. Like going back to that first pitch in Game 3 of the 2015 World Series when he knocked Alcides Escobar on his ass after the Mets were down 0-2.
I was at that game, by the way.
Were you really? Very cool.
That Game 3 of the 2015 World Series.
Well, if you were going to go to any game that series, that was the right game to go to.
That's right. What this fitted hat that I'm wearing.
Because I also remember me and you watching Game 4 of that.
Hat, as you can see.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Game 3.
Yeah. Very cool. I like I was saying, I also remember me and you watching Game 4 of that series at Anthony's house for the Halloween party and watching that ball go through Daniel Murphy's legs, man. That was terrible.
I was like, Anthony got to see what I'm like when I'm watching the Mets. Let's put it this way.
Yeah. Yep, very true. Very true. And that was terrible. That was terrible. But at least it was a fun night we had otherwise. Um but yeah, so with the with the Mets right now, so that they're getting a little healthy right now as we have Scherzer coming back right now. He's on the mend. He was throwing a couple of bullpen sessions. It looks like Jacob deGrom has thrown some bullpen sessions in the last couple of weeks. James McCann is actually starting a rehab assignment tomorrow for Double A Binghamton, so that'll be pretty cool. He should be back within the next week or two. Um, it's good to see these guys getting closer. Even Trevor May was throwing at 75 feet the other day, so he's starting to ramp it back up too. You can expect to see Trevor May at some point in the next month coming back. It's going to be good to get all these guys back, Dan. And most of the time when we're saying that, the Mets are, a couple of games under 500 and 5 or 6 or 7 games out of first place, and we're hoping for a big second half surge that maybe the Mets can put themselves back in contention. But that's not the case this year, buddy. As right now we sit 19 games over 500 and with a 5-game lead in first place. That's a pretty good place to be, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty good place to be. I feel different about this Mets team. This is something I haven't felt like in quite a while.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, there's a reason for that because these guys are good, man. I was just looking at a bunch of numbers for this Mets team. And, they lead the league. I forget it's right around 290 in batting with runners in scoring position. 290. I mean, if you remember last year, this team was under 200 for a lot of the year. To be 100 points better than that this year is just such a crazy turnaround, right, Dan?
It's crazy. We've gone a complete 180, and I feel like this team is gonna, unlike last year, we're gonna seal the deal.
Yeah, you're right. And another cool number I just saw too, which you have to know baseball to get this, where it's like when you have 2 strikes in Major League Baseball, the odds are against you. The league average, if you have under 2 strikes, is well under 200. So you're below the Mendoza line. If you got a 2-strike count, the odds are against you. Right now, the Mets are hitting 197 with runners with 2 strikes. And while that may not sound good, that actually leads Major League Baseball. 197 batting average is number 1 in Major League Baseball. Last year, the Mets were 28th in the league with a 154 batting average with 2 strikes. So just like you said, a complete 180, a complete turnaround. And I think one of the guys that we have to give credit to, not only Buck Showalter, but brand new hitting coach, former A's third baseman Eric Chavez, is a big reason for that, right, Dan?
I feel we got to give a lot of credit to him and Buck Showalter.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of these guys are saying that last year they were all pressing and they were trying to do too much with the information the Mets were giving them, and it wasn't about the process so much as it was about the results. And what happens when you lose the process? The results won't be there. So what the Mets have really done this season is focus on the process, meaning focus on just having a good at bat. And that's one thing you can tell up and down the lineup. These guys have good at bats. And one guy I really have to say that obviously, will give all the props in the world to Jeff McNeil, who's back to being the Jeff McNeil that we all knew and loved for the previous couple of years before last. But Pete Alonso, man, outside of 2019, where he was just incredible from game 1 to game 162, in 2020 and 2021, there were a lot of times where I felt that if you had a tough at bat with Pete Alonso or you got him to 2 strikes, that he was pretty much dead to rights, where not that you say that he couldn't do anything, but more than likely Pete Alonso wasn't going to come back once he had 2 strikes on him or anything. And man, this guy has had some of the best at bats this year. not only with 2 strikes, but just from beginning to end. And he is off to an incredible start. He's hitting right around 290. He leads the National League with 18 home runs, and he leads the National League with 59 RBIs. The only other Mets position player to ever drive in more runs than Pete Alonso has in these first 62 games is Mike Piazza, who drove in 62 runs in his first 62 games in the year 2000. This year, Pete has driven in 3 less in the same amount of time, 59. And he's leading the league by a wide margin, too. It's Pete Alonso might have 60 RBIs before anybody else in the National League even has 50. So very, very just great things we're seeing from this guy. Obviously, Brandon Nimmo's having a very good year, especially the guy just knows how to get on base. It looks like we're starting to see Eduardo Escobar wake up a little bit, right, Dan?
Yep, exactly. I think so far it's looking good so far, and I think it might be also because of Morphine Jabu, the good stuff.
Oh yeah, man.
The rum I offer Jabu.
Exactly, and whatever you do, do not drink Jobu's rum. Do not.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they did to steal Jabu's rum.
Exactly, man. And so Dan, you know what? Actually, if we're gonna look at the Mets offense right now, if you had to pick a guy on the team aside from Pete Alonso, who's just been incredible, if you're gonna pick a guy on this team, what offensive player on the Mets has impressed you the most so far this year?
I have to say, so far, Jeff McNeil, the guy's turning 180. The guy's become too pull heavy, and he's finally been able to get back into where in his comfort zone that he knows he can get singles and doubles.
Exactly. And he's doing a great job of hitting against the shift this year. I think the last I saw, maybe it was a game or two ago, but he was hitting 407 against the shift this year, one of the highest batting averages in the league against the shift. So gotta love Jeff McNeil as the shift breaker right there. And for me though, because honestly, I love Jeff McNeil. He's one of my favorite Mets, and it didn't surprise me that he turned it around this year. I thought he was definitely going to do it. But one thing I really do have an appreciation for so far this year is Starlin Marte. I mean, we saw over the weekend when the Mets didn't have him in the lineup a significant difference. The Mets lose a dimension of that effectiveness when he's not in there. And I love him in that number 2 spot. He has been such a joy to watch this year for me. How do you feel about Starlin Marte?
Yeah, he's been amazing. It's reminding me of almost back when during Jose Reyes in his prime. It was like we were a different team when he wasn't in the lineup.
Yeah, you're right. He adds that speed. And another thing that Jose Reyes did, which is a very good comparison, is that he adds that defense too. Especially, I really thought that when the Mets signed him, they were just going to stick him in center field because he's a center fielder and he's always been a very good outfielder. But I really think this is why Buck Showalter is great. And you have to give credit to Billy Epler, too, for allowing Buck to maneuver his team like this. Because I'm sure right off the bat, too, when Starlin Marte signed here, he probably thought he was signing here to be the center fielder. But, boy, Buck put his faith in Brandon Nimmo, and that has paid off, even with a great catch last night, where he made a diving catch where the catch probability of this was less than 20% when it was lined off the bat last night, and a great sprawling out diving catch for Brandon Nimmo to keep things rolling for Chris Bassett, who also had a really great redemption game for himself last night. And you just have to just be you have to just look at how great a guy is that Buck can come in. This is his baseball acumen, where he said to himself, you know what? Starlin Marte is a superior defender. So we don't need him in left field, obviously. So it's either center or right field. But you know what? Starlin Marte has the best arm of anybody in the Met outfield right now. So let's stick him in right field where you're going to need that arm. And it was so brilliant. That's one of the things when the Mets had Yoenis Cespedes that always bothered me, is that he by far had the best arm of anybody in that outfield, but he only felt comfortable playing either left or center field. He never felt comfortable playing right field, dating back to his days in Oakland and his short stay in Boston and Detroit before that. But the Mets tried to get him to play right field, and he just never wanted to. And that's knowing baseball. You have a guy with the best arm, and you have a guy who's going to be a team player like Starlin Marte, and say, okay, maybe I thought I was going to play center field, but that's not in the cards right now. I'll go to right field and play it great and have that great arm. And it's really made a difference out there, hasn't it, Dan?
Yeah, it really made a difference. I've been excited so far about how we've been playing so far, and it's been a lot of the usual noise and stuff people hear from where I'm watching the game.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, man. Just
people know I'm watching the Met game just by what they're hearing from me coming in the room.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you really have to give credit to everybody on this team. Everybody's contributed. Guys, going all the way down to Adonis Medina, Yon Lopez, Patrick Mazeika, Luis Guillorme. All these guys have contributed at different points this year. Even David Peterson, who a lot of people weren't sure if he was going to have, a role on this team. Tyler McGill, who is back tomorrow night, making his second start since his return from the IL. It just seems like everything's falling into place for this Mets team right now, right, Dan?
Yeah, it just feels like everything's been falling into place. We've even had players surpassing what we expected.
Yeah, now the one thing before we move on, too, that I did want to touch on is, the one thing that will put a damper on, like we said, encouraging 5-5 West Coast road trip for the Mets, where you lose 5 games in the standings because Atlanta has won 13 in a row. The Mets went from being 10 up in the division to 5 up in the division in the span of a week and a half, 2 weeks, because Atlanta has won 13 games in a row. They are on a roll, which I think they're even on a better roll than they were last year when they overtook the Mets for the division late in the season. Because even though Atlanta did go on a roll and, did win the World Series eventually and the National League East, I don't feel like at any point they were clicking like this. Like, if they had clicked like this early, in June last year, the Mets would have been out of first place by the 4th of July. It would not have lasted that long. And it might have even been before that. It might have been before the end of June. So to see this for the Braves is a little worrying, because you always have to keep your eye on Atlanta and even Philadelphia now too, who's playing with a pulse. They hit I don't know if you saw this today, Dan, but they hit a walk-off 3-run home run today, down 1-0 in the 9th inning. So since they got rid of Girardi, they just continue to win and continue to play good baseball. So Philadelphia, I might not be as scared of Philadelphia as I am Atlanta, but right now both those teams are keeping their name in the mix, right?
Yeah, they are, but I just have a feeling this year this Mets team's up to the task of not faltering like we did last year.
Oh yeah, I agree. I don't think this team is going to falter, but unfortunately, I was hoping that this was going to be more like a 2006 season, and by the All-Star break, we're just cruising to the playoffs. It doesn't look like it's going to be that this year, because it looks like Atlanta and maybe even Philly to a certain extent, even though Philly's still like 9 games out. It looks like Atlanta is going to be in it to the end, and even if the Mets win the division, it would not surprise me to see Atlanta still make the playoffs as a wild card.
Yeah, I have a feeling I might, not set in stone yet, but I might be attending that series in Atlanta in July. And
oh, really?
I feel like it could be a bloodbath.
That is definitely going to be a bloodbath, man. And
I'll be attending, and hopefully, if I do go, me and potentially my mother and sister will do a good job of trying to silence those loud Braves fans. And by the way, I'm not for teams having to change their names, but yeah, you could change the name. You could change the name of the Braves. As a matter of fact, I would love them to change their colors just to see fans who painted their room the Braves colors have to repaint their room.
what was that last part?
And maybe have to redo their tattoos.
Exactly, man. So let's just hope that, especially by that time that you're potentially going down to Atlanta next month, right about a month from now. Let's hope that Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer are both pitching in that series, right?
Yep, exactly. I have a feeling we're definitely not gonna falter. Those guys can come back to what we expect.
Oh yeah, man. And a guy that's going to help contribute to that too, before we move on from the Mets, really tip of the cap to Chris Bassitt last night for figuring it out. He threw 8 brilliant innings last night. He got 3 double plays in that game. Was really on his game. Him and Tomas Nido, I don't think he shook him off once all night after the last couple of starts where it seemed he was shaking him off like 3 or 4 times an inning. Really, you just got to hand it to Bassitt, right? The guy he pitched his ass off last night.
Yep, that he did. The guy pitched his heart out. I mean, it just looked like what we expected.
Yeah, and if you want to, say that it's true, he hasn't been as dynamic ever since James McCann went down. It seemed like those two had a really good rapport between the two of them. But I just got to give all the credit in the world to Bassitt. Especially this is a guy who got traded last second in spring training. He didn't really have, a lot of time to get his act together. And hey, right now, he's the number 3 starter who's 5-4 in our rotation, an ERA under 4, and I expect a much better second half out of him. So hey, this is a guy who's going to contribute to our success. And if they make the playoffs, he's going to be the game 3 starter, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, hey, that is a very, very encouraging thing, because we remember what the hell happened the last time the Mets made the playoffs, and we had our big top 3 of Harvey, Syndergaard, and deGrom. That the Mets rode that threesome all the way to the World Series. And hey, I mean, you can make the argument that Scherzer, deGrom, and Bassitt is even better than the 3 that I just mentioned before. So, I mean, you got to tip your cap to the Mets for getting this together. Billy Epler, man, the mad scientist, bringing all these guys together, and it's all working out pretty good so far.
It's all and so far, thank you, Billy.
Hashtag thank you, Billy. So, and with that, let's move on from the Mets as we're starting to run down here now. As let's just talk about the Yankees for a minute, real quick. As this team just continues to freaking roll. They are just incredible with the amount of success that this team has already had this year. They are 45-16. They're taking on the 35-26 Tampa Bay Rays tonight. They're sending Nestor Cortez to the mound, who has just been incredible. He's 5-2 with a 1.96 ERA. So they're getting a lot out of nasty Nestor so far. And they're going against Shane McClanahan tonight. So 2 big lefties, 2 really tough lefties to face too, going at it. What are your thoughts on this, Dan? Me and you've been talking about for a while now how the Yankees have been doing a really good job of beating up the lower teams, or the second division teams, and their competition is starting to level up now. And you know what? In all credit to the Yankees, they've gone out there and they whooped the crap out of Minnesota last week. They ended up taking 2 out of 3, but it looked more lopsided than that. And Minnesota's a pretty good team. Now they're about to try and take the series tonight from Tampa Bay. Obviously, they had the absolute destruction of the Chicago Cubs mixed in before there, and the Cubs are not a good team. But man, they got this, and then they have more games. That after this 3-game set against Tampa Bay, they have 3 in Toronto, 3 in Tampa Bay, and then come back for 4 against Houston. So the competition level is really going to be there for the next 10 days or so. What do you think, Danny? Do you think the Yankees are up to the task, or do you think this is where they come back down to earth a little bit?
I think the biggest competition they have is going to be with Houston. All right, even Minnesota, I kind of wasn't so really expecting them to really hang with the Yankees. I mean, just you figured out how often could you see one team lose to the same team in the playoffs almost every time?
Yeah. You can talk about all the times the Yankees kicked the crap out of them in the first round. If it wasn't for the Yankees, the Twins might have a couple of championships on their wall over the last few years, as it seems like every time they turn around, they're getting KO'd in the first round by New York.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I hear I'm from every Twins fan I know.
Yeah, so hey, and you can't blame them. They've been tortured by the Yankees for seemingly the last 20 years. So, anytime they have success, they have to go through the Yankees. And so far, they haven't been able to do that. One other thing with the Yankees, too, is that right now, as good as they've been, and the Yankees have been fantastic. I mean, by far the best team in baseball. You got to look like the Toronto Blue Jays, the second place team in that division. They're 11 games over 500. They're a pretty good team, and they look like they're going to be in the playoffs this year. They're 9 games behind the Yankees. That's how far out ahead the Yankees are right now. I just don't see this Yankee team slowing up. It reminds me a lot of that 98 team. And I know that's crazy to say, but it really does just have that feel to me. And I think one of the guys that adds a little bit of that grittiness to it is, what's his name? Josh Donaldson. And I know he was suspended. He was hurt. He's back now. He hasn't been the MVP type caliber player that he was in Toronto and, Oakland, where he was before that, but one thing I will say is I think he's added an element of grittiness to this Yankee team they didn't have. And they got a gamer in there. He's a great defensive third baseman. He's a unifying force in the clubhouse usually. And I think Josh Donaldson has had a major impact on this Yankee team. And to go back to 98, it kind of reminds me of when the Yankees picked up another former Oakland A third baseman, Scott Brosius. And I know Brosius did not have anywhere near the resume that Donaldson has right now. But you got to remember who was the World Series MVP in 1998, Dan? Do you remember? Scott Brosius. There we go. And this is a guy who the year before had a terrible year in 1997 for the Oakland A's. And he comes to New York. He hits 300 his first year, 18 home runs and 100 RBIs. Now, Scott Brosius probably Josh Donaldson probably isn't going to have that type of season. But if the Yankees go on to win the World Series and he's World Series MVP, I don't think they're going to give a crap what happened to him in the regular season, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and we all know that you love imagining the Yankees winning the World Series, right, Dan?
Could have thought of
that one. As I say that very, very sarcastically, because me and you, unfortunately, in our lifetimes, have had to sit back and watch quite a few Yankee World Championships. So it would be nice if our orange and our orange and blue boys can pull off putting up a ring themselves today, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So but I always have to, especially with the way the Yankees are playing this year, and Aaron Judge, and all these guys on the team. I mean, when you really think about it, everybody from DJ LeMahieu. He's only hitting 262, but he's still leading things off and getting things started over there. Aaron Judge having a great year. Rizzo has had his moments. He's been inconsistent, hitting around 220, but he's picked his moments and made them big. Giancarlo Stanton, like I said, Donaldson, Gleyber Torres has even picked it up. And one guy who I think has not gotten enough compliments this year is Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, the shortstop they acquired from the Minnesota Twins, actually, oddly enough, along with Josh Donaldson. He's played a great year. He's played great defense. He's hitting 270. He's not really shown a lot of pop, but I think Kiner-Falefa is a pretty decent player, Dan, and he reminds me of a 98 Yankee type player too. What do you think about that?
Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah, he's got that feel to me. I mean, not a superstar, but a good player and a good role player on a good team. So okay, and with that, I want to move along. We'll close up with the NBA Finals as we have right now the NBA Finals are 3-2 in favor of the Golden State Warriors. Dan, coming into this series, who did you pick? Did you think the Celtics were going to knock off the Warriors coming in?
I just had a feeling that the Celtics, and a lot of my friends in Boston were probably love this that I said this, but they just looked like they were riding a lot of high momentum going into the series.
They did, and it looked like it was really going to be a revenge tour for the Celtics, as the Celtics had knocked off a bunch of the teams that had tormented them the last couple of years. So they knocked the Knicks off. Not the Knicks, I'm sorry. They knocked off the Brooklyn Nets. They knocked off the Milwaukee Bucks. And it just looked like everything was kind of breaking their way. Jason Tatum had been playing out of his mind. And, the Celtics as a team just really, really rolling. Hasn't been that case the last couple of games, as, we have, like I said, 3-2 right now. Coming off the last game was a 120-110 victory. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong thing. It was a 104-94 victory over the Boston Celtics. So they took control of that series. Going forward, Dan, do you think that the Celtics have it in them to do what the Rangers couldn't, unfortunately, and take game 6 and 7? Or do you think that it looks like the Warriors are probably going to be hanging up another banner?
I don't know. This the way the Warriors have been playing. They're just playing like on another whole stratosphere.
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely true, man.
Other banner, and all of you in San Francisco, all of you in the Bay Area will probably be attending a parade in whatever they call your version of the Canyon of Heroes route they use here. I don't know if they have a name for it out there where you guys are, but in New York, that the route that all those parades go on is called the Canyon of Heroes.
The Canyon of Heroes. Yeah, I'm not sure. Obviously we've seen the Patriots do their whole river thing up there, whatever it is on the water. And I'm not really sure. What's that, Dan?
Thing is that Tampa Bay does the water thing, not New England.
Yeah, but didn't New England have something with the water too? It was something like that. Because I remember the Red Sox doing it too when they won.
I don't recall a parade in the water or using boats. I think I only recall Tampa Bay. Maybe I'm wrong. I gotta ask some of my Boston peeps about that.
Yeah, me and you, that's what you get. 2 New York guys. When Boston teams win, we kind of try to tune it out a little bit. But I seem to remember that, but I definitely could be wrong. I'm not 100% sure, but for some reason I remember that, because I remember I remember the Red Sox and Patriots doing it, but who knows? I could very well be wrong. But with that, everybody, I think we're going to be wrapping it up here. As actually, one last thing. So I just want to get your final prediction. Do you think Golden State hangs on, or you think the Celtics pull it off?
I'm gonna predict that Golden State hangs on to win this one.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm with you. I think that Golden State team is just too talented, and it's crazy that they're too talented even without Kevin Durant, who I'm sure is a little upset about his decision to go to Brooklyn, right? Yeah. So, all right, and with that, everybody, I want to thank everybody for tuning in once again to Best Seat in the House podcast. Another great episode with my great co-host Daniel Bobo Kurlan here. Dan, before we get out of here, give yourself one last plug.
Sure, you can find me on my Twitter page at Bobo103NYC and on Instagram Bobo718DK and Daniel Kurlan on YouTube.
All right, perfect, man. And same thing for me. You can check me out, my personal Twitter account at Cramer and Y. You can check out our show at BSith_podcast, or you can check us out on Instagram at Best Seat in the House podcast. So once again, want to thank everybody for tuning in, all of our loyal viewers and listeners and everything. We've been having a snafu on the audio feed of our podcast. I'm hoping to have it resolved by this weekend, but if not, just check out our YouTube. It always goes up on YouTube as scheduled every Thursday at around 9 or 10 a.m. in the morning. So it should be definitely out tomorrow morning. Keep an eye out on Apple and Spotify for the audio version of the podcast. But I'm just trying to figure that out and hopefully should have it resolved in a couple of days. So thank you for staying with us. Thank you for all the support. And we'll catch you next week on the Best Seat in the House podcast.